All right, well, we're going to go ahead and roll into living your best UU life, how to get a hold of your U time. And this evening, I'm here with Michaela, who's our moderator, and she'll be running the slides for us. So I want to welcome everybody who came to the class this evening. Next slide. Well, we have 3 items on the agenda. We're going to try to stay with our time of about 75 minutes. And we're going to talk about time and how it's related to spirituality. Then we have a broad swath of material and conversation about getting a hold of your U time. And I'm using the U as an abbreviation for YOU and also UU time. And then time as it is connected to stewardship. Next slide. Well, the question I brought to this block of time is, how much time do you really have? And I know we all have these notions that there are 24 hours in a day, but for me, the answer is this. Next slide. You have less time than you think. And that is, unless you can squeeze more hours out of the day. Let me close my door. So what I mean by squeezing time out of the day is, how do you make your time more productive and more efficient? And I do that. And my example is not maybe the best example, but I often get up early in the morning, say around 4 o'clock, and start writing and just getting things in my day organized. And I get to the gym, try to get to the gym around 5:30 in the morning. So by the time most people get up, I've already had a few things accomplished. So I've squeezed some things into the day that many people may not have been able to do because they're getting up later, but also go to bed early now. So last night I went to bed at 7:30. I was just really tired. And but I managed to get up this morning at 2:30, which is not normal for me. But I've been up ever since. So I've been able to squeeze a lot of things into this day that normally I wouldn't have done. Next slide. So here's the breakdown of a typical day. And I'm thinking of people who work, and I'm also thinking about people who are retired or semi-retired or homemakers. So we have 24 hours a day, 8 hours. If you're lucky, you get to sleep. Now, my physician has told me that 6 or 7 hours is also a good night's sleep. Or if you're a day person or who works at night, 6 hours of day sleep could be good. I know that's kind of hard to do. I used to work at night and it was always hard for me to sleep in the daytime. But however you feel a normal good night's rest is, we're aiming for 8. That's kind of the traditional good night's sleep. And then you have 8 hours for work. If you're a person who has a 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or something like that, those hours are allocated 5 days a week. For those who are retired or semi-retired or homemakers or some other non-traditional work, you have things to do also. And from what I hear from people who are retired, they got busier in retirement than when they were like me, working stiff, going to work every day. So that's another third of the day. Then if you're working, you have an hour to prepare for work. That could be getting up, showering, brushing your teeth, making your coffee, blah, blah, blah. You get that hour just to kind of get yourself together. And then you have this time that I call pre-thought about work, because when I was driving to work, when I lived in Dallas or when I lived in North Carolina, or even when we go to Albuquerque now, much of that time is thinking about what you're going to do when you get there. And that is non-compensated time. So I believe that ought to contribute to how your time gets used in a given day. And then if you have to commute, I know many in our congregation have to go to El Paso, some of them go to White Sands or other areas in the region. And that can be an hour easily every day, or even more, depending on conditions, weather, traffic, whatever can go on. I was talking to a guy last week, and I was down in a store in Las Cruces who was a airman at Holloman, and he was saying that he commutes from Holloman to Las Cruces because he couldn't get an apartment when he moved to Holloman down in Alamogordo or anywhere in that area. And he was saying, man, I just can't take it. And it was so bad for him that he was ready to get out of the Air Force. Said, I can't do it anymore. So that shows you how that commute really takes a toll on our daily allocation of time. So I'm saying easily an hour one way if you have to drive beyond Las Cruces. Next slide. So how many hours a day for you time? 4. That's the typical number that I've derived, and it could be plus or minus. And then of that 4 hours that you have a day, you have your spouse, your family, you may have children, you may have other friends to attend to. You want some downtime, you gotta wash the dishes, you gotta cook meals, you gotta wash clothes. There's just all kinds of things that can take up that remaining 4 hours. So your time for you is fairly condensed in a given day. And I'm sure you can think of a number of things that you want to do when your 4 hours are yours. I was talking to one of my UU colleagues today who's in Las Vegas, Nevada, Gordon Bailey, who actually preached for us back in January, said that when his wife comes home, she is totally wiped out. And he says he can look at her and tell she has nothing left for him or anybody else. She's just done. So you just imagine if you come home exhausted, then that 4 hours really is something that you want just for you. Here's a fun fact that came from the Gottman Institute up in Seattle. It said that the average couple only spends 4 minutes a day talking to each other. So it's just something to show how the time gets really condensed and how little of it we have for each other when it really comes down to, this is what the research says. Next slide. And here's the important aspect of this whole thing around time and how it will eventually relate to stewardship, is that having a good understanding of time gives you more control. Everybody knows the Janet Jackson song, Control. We all want to have control of our lives and what we do with our lives, and being aware of this time situation and how much we can make a difference gives us a sense of control. Next, worrying about time hijacks your brain. It just keeps you preoccupied about things that you need to do, want to do, didn't do, may have forgotten about. And before you know it, you're just always thinking about time and how little you have or how much more you need. Time and worrying about time robs you of your spiritual bliss, however you define that. The noted religionist and teacher Joseph Campbell said, we should follow our bliss, which is the things that bring us the most joy. So however you find joy, purpose, happiness in your life, especially in your inner life, becomes more of it if you have a sense of time management. Getting a hold of your time allows you to be present every moment, or as many moments as you can be present. And that in itself is kind of a discipline that comes, or a capacity that comes when you have practice being present in the moment. A lot of the spiritual teachers say if you want to be present in the moment, you just always return to your breath. And if you can focus on your breathing, that puts you into the current time. And I think it's Eckhart Tolle says you only have the present moment as it is. So why not do all you can to be present in it? Next thing we're going to talk about are these time horizons. So being mindful of the different ways of categorizing time helps you feel like you have more structure in your life. Then you can reserve time for spiritual practice, what we'll get to. And then ultimately, as this ties to stewardship, having a good hold of your time allows you to allocate more time to the church. Does anybody else have any other ideas about why time is important to them that they want to share with the rest of us? If not, we can go into the next slide. Okay. All right, we're going to break out into, how many people do we have here? We have 13. I'm thinking we could break out into maybe 3 groups of 4. Well, let me take myself out, Michaela out. So let me just do 2 groups of 6. One will be 5 and one will be 6. If you take out Michaela and I. Michaela, you can just break it up evenly. And what we're going to do in the breakout room is talk about these 2 ideas of how do you spend your spare time? And then if you had more time, or you could create more time, how much time would you create for yourself or for your partner or your family? How much time do you need in your life? So we're going to take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 6:56. And I'll ask both groups to have someone speak for the group and say, give us an idea of what you all do in your spare time, and then how much time would you create if you could. Does that make sense, everybody?
Sure.
Okay.
Not enough time.
Not enough time. I was trying to get Michaela to give you a few more extra minutes, but I think I sent her the message. She was out of the room, so it came back on time. Sorry about that. I think I realized what happened with my with the scheduling is that when I put this on my calendar, I was in Central Time, and then when I got back, the Google Calendar automatically shifted it from the Central Time, which was 6:30 at the time, to 5:30.
Oh,
What are you
Okay, I
gonna
can
do
think
about the next 2 sessions? You want them to be at 5:30?
No, I think I had it at 6:30, but the calendar shifted it. You know, it does an automatic shift when you go to time zones.
Some changes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
I
what
know,
happened.
but the next 2, you're following 2 meetings. What time do you want them to be? 5:30 or 6:30?
I thought I'd ask the group and see what's the best time for you all.
Well, I've got a conflict on Thursday because that's also when the 8th principal group meets.
It is, I saw that.
And
So,
finance meets on Tuesday, so, we got conflicts all over the place.
And hospitality meets Thursday.
Time management.
Right.
What'd you say, Brooks? I thought he said something.
We'll probably just do it at 5:30 and leave it that way. We'll try to get the time straightened out with Sherry.
Okay.
Well, how did it go? What did you all come up with in terms of how do you spend your time? Your spare time?
I'd say mine isn't productive.
I'd say in
Okay,
our
Doc.
group, we're all doing what we want to do since we're all retired, even though I seem to be the only one who's doing what I think is too much, but still, it's what I want to do.
Good.
You matter. That's what we said in our class. You matter.
You matter.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
And I'm the one looking for structure for all the time I have. I'm a little bit different.
Well, we're gonna try to help you get some. And does anybody feel like they needed more time in a day? I heard Carol says she's doing too much. You may need some
Yes,
more.
I need more time.
Need more time? Okay, okay. Well, the first session, Joel said that he spends 30 minutes to an hour every day taking care of everybody else's time because he has approved timesheets and approved vacation and this, that, and other. So I said, is that a good use of your time? He said, absolutely not. Something he has to do. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So the next thing is about how to get things done. And this comes from the framework that I adopted from Getting Things Done, a book by the teacher David Allen. Next slide. What David Allen says is that we have these time horizons, and these are ways of organizing our time. And he uses this metaphor of a plane that's cruising through the air on its way to touchdown. So at the very highest time horizon, you're at 50,000 feet, and you're looking at your life very broadly. So this would be, how do you manage the things that you said that you would do to get you where you want to go? So this is your life mission, your life purpose, your career in very broad, sweeps, and just the idea of who are you and what are you trying to do? What are you trying to get accomplished? Have that nailed down. The next thing is coming down, you're to 40,000 feet. And this is your 3 to 5 year vision. This could be a lot of things. It could be, what are your kind of mid-range goals? You could be planning on a career change, a move. You could have children or grandchildren who are graduating from high school or college, and you're trying to support their next move. It could be something in your relationship that you want to see come to fruition in the next short to mid-term time frame. And this can be personal and it can be professional. So if you're talking about your job, if you're working, do you aim for a promotion over the next 3 to 5 years? Perhaps you have a certain job in mind. How are you structuring your time so that will happen within that time slot? Then 30,000 feet, you're coming closer to the runway and you're looking at your 1 to 2 year projects and things that you want to get done over the next year. It could be your 1 year goal. It could be things like finishing up a education process, a degree, or a certification, or it could be working on a new house, for example, or remodeling. It could be getting a family member out of the house. During COVID, a lot of people experienced their adult children coming back to live with them. It could be some way of getting them out, or it could be preparing for someone to move in, a parent, or just something that has a shorter window of time that you need to really pay attention to and make sure it's done. Say, if we're looking at the calendar now, by this time next year or in 2023. 20,000 feet, you're talking about those areas of your life that you're responsible for personally and professionally. So you're looking at your primary relationship with your spouse. How are you in relationship with that person? The things that you have to do on your job if you work. You know, who do you supervise? Who do you manage? Up and down the chain of command or responsibility. You're talking about if you have, say, several projects that are really big, like working on a book, or say you're trying to, I said, remodel a house could be a short-term project. I know that our administrator, Sherry, bought a house this year, and they've been through many parts of renovating that house because they bought it as a fixer. So every several weeks or so, she'll say, we finished this, we finished that. Last week, I think I heard her say, we got our kitchen finished, I think is what she said. I can't think what it was, but something got finished last time we were on a staff meeting. So these are just the various areas of your life that you're trying to make sure you have a handle on and have a complete grasp of all the things that you are responsible for as an individual. And then 10,000 feet, these are all the projects that you're working on now. So that could be, for me, I have a page list of projects that I'm working on. And he wants you to list every project that you have. So it could be getting the tires changed on the car, getting a physical, going to the dentist, cleaning out the garage. You got a deadline on the job. You got to write performance reviews. You need to write some letters to your friends or take care of this for your sibling or your children or your parent. Just everything that you have to do, list it down. And what Alan says is that you should have at least 50 things on your list. Because if you don't have 50 items, you probably have not thought it through enough. So what he does is he goes around the country, around the world, helping executives who have just huge time burdens. And he'll spend 2 days going through this process, but primarily what he does is helps them get all these projects down on paper. So that is the key to this whole process, is make sure you have a list of everything down, because once you have it all down, then you don't have to think about it. And then when you get to the runway, you're writing a next step for every project. So just take, for example, you have on your list, I want to get the car washed. Well, what is the next step to get the car washed? Is it to get to the car washer, wash it yourself? You know, what do you need to do? Say you need to go, and if they're added on my list, I haven't had a lab panel done in the last year because I had to change doctors. And so I just haven't really kept a good record of when my last labs were. I can look it up, of course, but I know it's been more than 6 months. So I sent an email to my current position and said, can you schedule me to get labs? And then the next step would be to hear from them with a date when they go get those labs, to get that blood drawn. So these are the things that you want to do, is to make sure you have every project listed and a next step for every one. So you want to list big projects, small projects, just whatever, just get them all on paper. Does that make sense to y'all? Any questions about it?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you saying you should have 50 current projects, or are you saying this whole from 50,000 feet to the runway is 50?
Well, he's saying on the current projects, you have 50.
Okay.
Most people have at least that many things going on. And there can be, very small things like, I gotta sweep the floor. I gotta wash the laundry this week, or I gotta go plant some things in the backyard. All these things that you have committed to either to yourself, to your spouse, to your community, to whomever. All these are the projects that you want to list. So he says, he really frames it as, what are the commitments you have made to yourself that you want to get done?
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
The only thing, Kalani, that rubs me a little bit the wrong way is that it seems like it's a very task-oriented life and doesn't allow much room for spontaneity.
It is task oriented, and that's where we're going to get to the spontaneity. Is the spontaneity comes by having the structure. It allows you to have more freedom. So by listing all these tasks and all these next projects and next steps, you then have more bandwidth in your mind and inside of you to be spontaneous, because you're not worried about getting something done. Does that make sense?
Well, almost kind of, but I mean, what about the whole idea of letting go, letting things go and being okay with that?
Well, I think that could be on the list too.
You got to schedule in some spontaneity there, John. Just schedule in. Okay, from now for the next 46 minutes, I'm going to be spontaneous.
Let me give you a good example. I got an email from somebody today who had communicated with me a year ago about the possibility of coming down here because she wanted to get out of the Michigan cold. So I wanted to write her a thoughtful response. And so I wanted to write her back. And so I had to spend, let's say, a half an hour thinking about what I wanted to say and then writing it. And that was not on my list, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Well, could I just add one thing very quickly? I think that John raises a very good point. And one of the things that I did when I was back in my workaday world, when I was leading a team of people, is every year I would have us get together and identify the things that we were doing together as a group. And then one of the tasks would be, what should we stop doing as a group?
That's good.
As as a way of to use the metaphor you use, Kalani, of creating more bandwidth for new projects and new innovations. So what were the kinds of things that we were doing that were no longer as necessary or as productive? And so it's in addition to have a to-do list, a not to-do list.
That's good.
Good. I like that. Yeah, when I was in my last job down in Tampa, we had all these projects that we had to keep track of from week to week. And a lot of times those projects would just fall off because somebody would forget to ask about them again, right? So you're reporting up and you knew that your immediate, your first up the chain is not gonna worry about it, a month from now. So just go away. And Joel did also say there should be time, which kind of gets at what Joel was saying, is time just to do nothing.
Right. Yeah. Kalani, early in the pandemic, I heard a podcast that in many ways got me through the pandemic because of its good ideas. And one of the things they talked about was the fact that people were suddenly isolated and suddenly their time was all messed up because they either couldn't go to work or they had to work differently and so on and so forth. And this podcast was talking about making to-do lists as a way of control in an uncertain time, and giving yourself sort of grounding, giving your time some grounding. And that made sense to me because of a children's story, one of the ones that we used to read to the church when Dick and I were reading the Frog and Toad stories, which are kids' books. And it's about a frog, a toad who gets up and needs to do things and he can't get himself organized. So his friend says, make a list. And he says, oh, that's great. what's the first thing on the list? Wake up. I have done that. And so he gets to mark that off the list. And so I was remembering that. And for the whole of COVID now, I have written a list every day of what I had to do, with the first thing being wake up. And I have marked it off. I have done that. And I thought, isn't that the stupidest thing? Isn't that the silliest thing? But I found that it kind of anchored me. I was very surprised at that.
That's a good point. Yeah, I was talking about time at my UU military session this Sunday. One of the guys said something similar, said that when he was coming into sobriety and quitting drinking, it was hard for him just to get up and get his feet on the ground, get his feet on the floor. And that's what he would do, is he would just make it a point just to get up. That was part of his listening, because he did list too. So just getting up, getting my feet on the ground, getting out of the bed and get moving was something that was an accomplishment for him. And over time, that really did anchor him too. So I appreciate that. Okay, next slide. So what I want to do now is just give you about 10 minutes to make a list of all of your current projects. And we won't discuss these. You don't have to tell us what your list consists of, but I want to give everyone a chance to be intentional here about just listing everything they have on their plate. Now, Susan, you might not have anything to write down since she was already done, but some of us haven't done this. This could be just a time to just list all the projects, all the things that you are doing. Like I said, it could be, I gotta go get the car washed. I gotta go get the car tuned up. I need to go to the grocery store. I gotta go get the dry cleaning, go to the church and pick up something or drop off something. Whatever you have, everything you can think of, just put it on the paper, and you don't have to worry about next actions, just the projects. So we're gonna go, let's say it's 10 minutes. Let's go to 7:30 and make it an even 13 minutes. And if you get to the end of your current list, then start writing down the next action for each item on your list. So we'll start now to 7:30. And we're back. How did that go for you all?
Big job.
Big job.
Yeah, I struggled with how granular to be. And I have to admit that the word projects has a connotation for me that is, sort of, big projects, as opposed to, washing my car project. But it's been so long since I've washed my car, that would now qualify as a big project.
I
That's a
found
good point there.
I found it useful. I rarely spend any time each day making a list. I have some kind of ongoing list that I add to, but I found it useful to just spend 10 minutes and think about the things that I could do in various horizons. So it was a plus for me.
Yeah, I agree. I also find it useful to sit down and do this. And I've been keeping a list for years, and I keep it on my iPhone, one of those task lists, and then I kind of break it down. But one of the things that I found over time is I don't look at it often enough.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that I have to do kind of slide into obscurity. So it was good to sit down and write this out. And I also found that some of my, let's see, we called those, that page, we were doing current projects, right? And some of my current projects that I listed, and I came up with about 36, are really more current activities. So I need to refine the list a bit.
The example Dave gave is a good one for me because it is a simple task or a routine task to get your car washed or keep it cleaned out. And for me, I don't do it enough either. And but when I don't do it, the car gets kind of filthy, right? So at some point, I get to the point where I can't take it anymore, and I'm still riding around in this dirty car. But if I write it down, I'll get it done, and I don't think about it anymore. So that's kind of one of the benefits of putting it down. It kind of forces me into action. We'll go to the next slide. So here are the things that we want to keep in mind about the list and why they're important. One, make sure you list every incomplete task. Always know what the next action step is. Keep renewing your list on a daily basis. As Susan said earlier, she gave the good outcomes advantage of having that practice. And then I have sometimes another list that says, these are the things that I have to get done before the sun goes down. And those are my real priorities on any given day. I don't always have a before the sun goes down list, but there's some days where, like if I'm preparing order of service, I need to have that done by usually Wednesday. That way, that task is over and I can let everybody else know it's done. Next slide. So here are the caveats that I wanted to bring up from what John was saying earlier about the spontaneity and being able to do things that just pop up. And I say, be aware of what is the most proximate thing versus what is the most important thing. And that comes with emails, for example. You get a lot of emails on a given day. And it's easy just to start taking them from the top. But those on the top may not be the most important, but they're the ones that just show up right there in your face. So, John, I would say that could be an example of how do you decide if writing the email back to your friend is the most important, even though we know it's the most proximate because you dealt with it right then. So you had this decision to make, and we all have these decisions to make when things pop up on our radar that we weren't expecting. Can we put them aside because they're higher priorities, or do we need to deal with them now because they're that urgent? And the example I gave earlier is that when you were sitting in the church, when the administrator is not there, before COVID, I could sit there in that desk, or I could sit in my office, the door open. But if I sat at the desk, I knew everything that came in was going to be the most proximate, because when people come in the door, for them, what they're bringing is the most important. And it just is nonstop some days. I didn't know how hard that job was until I sat there a couple of days after Naomi was on vacation or she was gone. I said, man, can't get anything done in this place. So I know for Sherry, it happens also. So we decided that we had to make Monday and Friday days that were just closed, because the most important things sometimes weren't getting done because people come in with approximate and want it done right then. And sometimes we can even be in a Zoom meeting where Sherry was sitting at her desk, person will walk up, see her on the meeting, but still talk as if she's not in the meeting. And so it gives her the challenge of saying, can I get back with you? Because I'm in a meeting. But often the person just couldn't seem to hear it. So we had to make a change. So this is where I would say, be aware of, are you dealing with the thing that is the most urgent, or the thing that has the most salience to you at the moment that you're seeing right in your face? Any questions about that? Next slide. So we have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to give you some time to think about how do you organize your spiritual practice once you have this system in place. So this is the kind of beginning of a new system for some of us. Some of us will already have their systems in place and they don't really need this, but I'm hoping that this gives you some way of at least thinking about time so that you can then, if you aren't already, think about how do you spend your time for spirituality or your inner life or working towards that bliss that Joseph Campbell talked about. So I'm going to give you just 5 minutes. And I believe that everybody here is already spending a lot of time or devoting an hour at least per week to UUCLC service. So we can spend our last few minutes just talking, thinking about your spiritual practice. We don't have to necessarily break out into a room now since we're just a kind of a small group, but why don't we just take about 3 or 4 minutes and just to yourself, reflect on how you can spend an hour per week. And I know that some people spend an hour per day on spiritual practice, whether it's prayer or meditating or journaling or running or writing. So let's just go from now until say 7:42. Let's give you 3 minutes, kind of reduced it down and just think about it for a few minutes. And we'll come back in a few minutes and talk about it.
So we're focused on the first one or the second one,
The
Connie?
first one, how do you spend time? How can you spend an hour a week on spiritual practice?
Okay.
All right. Would anyone like to share with us their ideas of spiritual practice?
Could we take the slide down so we can see each other in the gallery view?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things that one of the teachers that I have been in contact with reminds me is that old saying, which is before enlightenment, draw water, carry wood. After enlightenment, draw water, carry wood. If I look at all of my life as being spiritual practice, all of it, my intention is to live a life that's imbued with spirit, then I don't really have to set aside additional time, even though, the meditation practice and all that stuff is also good. But for me, it's more about that intent, seeing whatever it is that I'm doing imbued with spirit.
Very nice.
Well,
Anyone
I
else?
try to go outside and look at the sunset often. Just step outside and look at it. And really look at it. And I do that probably 3 or 4 times a week. And it doesn't take any time at all, but it's just, a minute to just breathe and settle down.
Time in nature.
Yeah.
Time outside.
Right.
I like that. I did that yesterday with my buddy Seth. We were up off of 185 and we were up on a mountain peak and came down right as the sun was coming down. And it was quite glorious to see that sun fading over the mountains, seeing the horizon and the different colors. It was gorgeous. We'll go to the next slide. You go to the next slide, Michaela. Where are the takeaways I want to leave you with this evening? To be aware of how limited time is for you, for each of us, and to be aware that when you're worrying about time, your brain is hijacked because you become preoccupied with just the notion of where is my time going or how much do I have left, which robs you of your bliss that Joseph Campbell talked about. Getting a hold of your time allows you to be present. And we heard several talk about being present, whether it means getting rid of something that you used to do, taking time just to do nothing, to be spontaneous, but having a sense of structure can allow you to have the present moment as it is. You want to be aware of your time horizons, create lists as you go and manage those lists. And that allows you to move into that spiritual practice with a more open, free, empty mind to appreciate it. And we all here are making plenty of time for the church. So I believe that is how we tie all this time into stewardship, by having structure and being aware of our time, not being too, what's the word you said, John, task oriented, but yet being aware of tasks that need to be done to keep us where we have a hold of our time. We can then be better stewards of our time and of course our community as a church. Any other takeaways, any questions, any follow-up from that? Next slide. Next slide. All right, well, thank you all for coming. Hope it was meaningful for you. And we'll hope to see you back on Thursday. We're gonna try to go for the 5:30 time slot. I know that might hopefully eliminate some conflicts. Maybe not.
I have a quick question, Kalani.
Go ahead.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate the effort. I really do. And it's nice to see everyone. Could you just give us a brief preface as to what we're going to talk about on Thursday, so I can be thinking about it ahead of time?
Yeah, I'm glad you said I should have done this. It's how to share your gifts of your talent with the church and in your life, and how to kind of move into your purpose, your mission, your personal mission, your spiritual mission, and how that ties into stewardship. So that's what we'll be looking at, primarily your gifts as a human being and how you can share them with the community and how you can be aware of them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Appreciate your time. Good to see all you all.
So long.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kalani.
Bye.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Everybody later. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Thanks, Michaela.